This is the Good Morning ISLA200 show.
This podcast was prepared by the fall 2023 cohort of ISLA200 Islamic Civilizations at McGill University.
Grab a warm drink and tune in as our presenters take you on a deep dive into Islamicate history with reflections on how they relate to contemporary Muslim life and culture.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to an ISLA200 podcast. For today's episode, we're going to be talking about Sharia and film. Sharia, basically, we're going to start with the definition to lay the baseline. Sharia literally means path in Arabic, and it constitutes the derivation of Islamic law from Islamic principles that are rooted in the Quran and the Hadith. And it's through philosophy and what we call fiqh that these legal rulings are derived. I think my co-host, Sarra, is gonna take it on from here.
Perfect. So today we're joined by three amazing guests that are going to be talking about three movies, A Separation, Timbuktu, and Wajda. So we have today Ibti with us, who's a Moroccan film critic. We also have Grace, who's an Armenian academic in Islamic studies. And last but not least, we have Salma, who is a Moroccan film director. So do you want to introduce yourselves and talk about the movies?
Yes. Sure. Okay, so I'm Salma. I'm a Moroccan film director. So we're gonna start by presenting the movie A Separation. So it's an Iranian movie directed by Asghar Farhadi. It was released in 2011 and it went on to win several awards, including the 2012 Academy Award for Best Foreign Language Film. The film doesn't specifically explore Islamic law, but instead it concentrates on domestic and interpersonal difficulties. However, the movie portrays several features of Islamically inspired Iranian society and the legal system in general.
Who wants to go next?
Maybe I can go next. So I chose to focus on Timbuktu and to present the movie Timbuktu by the Mauritanian director Abderrahmane Sissako. It's a beautiful movie released in 2013, and it kind of counts the story, the real-life story of what happened in Timbuktu in 2011 when members of Al-Qaeda, took over the city for about 6 months and completely drastically changed the lives of its inhabitants, forcing on them a pretty repressive and rigorous application of Sharia law. And I think it was relevant because it fits with the problem question that we agreed on tackling, right?
Exactly. Thank you so much. Now I think Grace would like to say a few words.
Hi, I'm Grace. I am the Armenian academic in Islamic studies. And here we have Wajda, directed by Haifa Al-Manzour, who also wrote the film. It was released in 2012, and it takes place in Saudi Arabia and follows a 10-year-old girl with the name of Wajda, and she wants a bike. And through her story, we learn a specific and distinctive viewpoint, specifically one of a 10-year-old girl, and understand the implications of it and how it affects children and women.
Amazing, thank you. Yeah, I thoroughly enjoyed watching all those movies. Wajda has a very special place in my heart because I've spent a large part of my upbringing in Saudi Arabia, and I think the movie was able to capture a lot of the realities of living there, especially at that time. I think we're gonna talk a bit more about that later. But so as we all know, Sharia is based on institutions, legal institutions, roles like the Mufti, the Qadi. It's a system that even Muslims believe. This is often a misconception. People think that there's a book of Sharia. That's not true. It's a system that even Muslims believe and promote as being created by humans, based on human philosophy and human interpretation. So how would you guys say that these institutions are portrayed in all of the movies you chose to talk about today?
I think as a movie critic, I've also had the opportunity to watch A Separation, and the three movies in general. But what's really striking about A Separation is that it shows actually the situation in Iran and how in Iran, in the justice system, Sharia law, traditional Sharia law is still quite relevantly used in the sense that the structure is still here. For instance, there's a scene in the courtroom where the husband Nader and his wife Simin are confronted with the judge and just need to explain why they want to proceed in a divorce. And it was quite striking because usually there should be an attorney to support, which was kind of something already used in Sharia, traditionally in Sharia law, something that already existed is that one should speak for himself or herself. So that was interesting.
As for legal institutions and systems, Wajda doesn't really show anything related to the justice system, but instead we get to see the education system. Wajda herself goes to a public school, and there she has teachers and mentors, technically. She has one that is teaching her about how to properly recite the surahs within the Quran and basically how to read it with more lyricality rather than just reciting words. And then there's Miss Hassa, who is also another teacher, but sort of has the role of a principal. And she really demonstrates like applying Sharia to, the academic life and sometimes even the personal life of these little girls. She doesn't let them, so if they are outdoors, the men are not allowed to, see them. There's this one part where these girls are playing outdoors and they see men outside. And then they're like, if we can see them, they can see us. So immediately they go back inside. And for context, they are not covering their heads. So that's why it's so important for them to not be seen. We also see the importance of being devout. We also see the importance of, there's a lot of conversation about not painting or coloring on yourself, which two girls get in trouble for and are even ostracized for. So it just demonstrates Sharia law in a different, less justice system context.
Amazing. Yeah, that's very interesting. As Sharia is a societal concept. It's not just based on legal institutions. And I think Salma had something to say about that as well.
In Timbuktu, what's quite interesting is that Sharia law is applied. So in Timbuktu, Sharia law is also part of the justice system in a sense, because it acts as a reference in order to base the different punishments to the population if they transgress what the members of Al-Qaeda find are. So in Timbuktu, what's interesting is that Sharia law will also applied in a kind of like justice system way, in a sense that the members of Al-Qaeda use it as a basis to the different punishments they reserve to the ones who kind of step out of their idea of what is right and what is wrong. So there's no flexibility, no jurisprudence, no opportunity of discussing the charges one can be accused of. And what was also interesting was that the members of Al-Qaeda have this kind of one-way state of mind. This is what is written in the scriptures. This is how it should be applied. So again, a lack of interpretation, but we can kind of draw a parallel with the figure of the imam of one of the mosques of Timbuktu that was originally here and serving as an imam before they stepped in the city. And this figure is quite important because he is still used and looked, he kind of acts as the spokesperson for the population of Timbuktu, since he represents their true values. And he acted also as a mufti before the group came in the city. So his wisdom and his study and deep study of the scriptures and the hadiths and the different holy supports are really important. But again, he's not quite, he's losing this role and he's losing his influence as they become and they take more and more power over the city and over its inhabitants and take more power through violence and through committing these acts of repression and stuff like that.
No, definitely. Yeah, it's great that you brought that up. I think Timbuktu does a great job of showing the disconnect between a disgusting group like Al-Qaeda and what people just, you know, actually think and see as Sharia. Because in the end, Sharia is simply a form of legal philosophy. It's just one of many paths on which societies construct their morals on. And yeah.
It was a really smart move for Abdurrahman Sissako to introduce this specific character and to put it in comparison with the jihadist group to kind of show their decadence and their lack of, it kind of acted as an emphasis to prove how inhumane their actions were and how disproportionate they were too also.
Mm-hmm.
So that was really interesting. In all three movies, gender, especially women, is a very important topic. Salma, Grace, Ibti, how would you describe gender interactions and intimacy in these movies according to Sharia law and all?
Okay, so in the movie A Separation, there's a really interesting point about gender. So there's this scene where there's the housekeeper and the grandpa, and basically the housekeeper is embarrassed to touch or like even hold the grandpa who has trouble walking and like kind of like showering. And here we have a dilemma because the housekeeper is like, the question is, should she help the grandpa and disrespect the principle of Islam where a woman can't touch a person from, like, a person can't touch another person from the opposite gender, or should she like help him out? And yeah, because like two principles of Islam are here like opposed. And yeah, I just found this very interesting about like this question of gender.
Yeah, definitely. And yeah, so there's this thing with the interaction between the two opposite sexes, but also I think what prevailed in all of the three movies is just the place of the woman in general. I mean, each of the three directors give a very important role to
Yeah.
to female leads. They kind of carry this entire movie. You see it with Wejda. You see it also in Timbuktu. There's just this very funny, but I know, and I think we all know that this was part of a reality, and it was just a kind of, they shared this experience that surely has happened to a real woman. But there was this fish seller um, who was just trying to sell her fish in the market as usual, just continue a habit. She's a fish seller. This is what she does, and she gets just scolded by one of the members of the terrorist group because she is not wearing gloves, and she is just completely in awe because how is she going to be able to sell fish and to pour water on the fish that she's selling in the market and keep them fresh with gloves on? It's just it has no sense. It makes no sense. And she is not afraid to stand up for herself and to even yell at a group of men literally armed and who don't necessarily seem scared to fight back or to arrest her. They even threaten to arrest her, and she gets arrested eventually. And but still, it's very relevant to kind of showcase the place women hold in these kinds of societies. They're not scared to speak up, and they can also carry out the voice of an entire population with them.
Definitely, yeah. Thanks so much for bringing that up. I think these movies were grassroots. I mean, they were produced by directors from those respective countries or areas. I think Abdurrahman Sissoko isn't from Mali. He's Mauritanian, I believe.
Mauritanian, but there's still a link. He has a
Yeah.
deep personal link with Mali and this whole Saharian region.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Definitely. And Haifa al-Mansour is from Saudi, and Asghar Farhadi is Iranian. And they made it very important to not only show how a lot of these structures are oppressive towards women, but also how women tend to thrive and fight these structures despite the oppressive nature.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, putting forward the resilience of the population and how strong and brave they can be. Definitely. When facing these kinds of oppressive systems.
Definitely.
Yeah.
And this goes against a lot of the cliches that are shown in the West about societies that are based on Islamic principles. And
yeah,
do you think, Grace, you'd have anything to say about the movie Wajda, where the main character happens to...
Definitely. Yeah. I think the main character, she really demonstrates, Ibti had brought this up, like how women can still thrive under this type of environment. And it's really like sweet because throughout the movie, the main conflict is Wajda wants a bike, but everyone around her is telling her girls can't bike. Because there's literally an entire Wikipedia page dedicated to bikes and can women, like Muslim women, ride them. And Wajda, she really pushes through all of the obstacles that are thrown at her. She's able to collect the money she needs. She's able to prove that she can actually ride a bike with her friend Abdullah. And in the end, it's really sweet because she gets the bike no matter the obstacles thrown at her. Like there's a part where she enters a contest to win money to purchase a bike. And when she does win, her teacher, Ms. Hassa, takes that money away from her to donate it for another cause. And even with this, in the end, her mother supports her, her friend supports her, and it's really, I really admired seeing her go through all of this and still, get what she wanted in the end, because it proves that even though there are these oppressive systems, people can still overcome them, specifically women in this case.
So also to bounce back, in Timbuktu, there's this really interesting scene where a group of youngsters gather together in a house, and they're playing music. And this group is composed of young men and young women, and they're just having a fun time in their little intimate space. And unfortunately, they get caught. And what's interesting is that there's this whole idea about intimacy that the Al-Qaeda members seem to just completely forget. You're not allowed to do things that are quote unquote frowned upon by what seems to be their view of Sharia law, even in your house, in your intimate area. You're not allowed to play music outside nor inside. So it just shows the intrusivity of it all. And also I wanted to link it with the interactions between genders, since the singer of the group and I think one of the guitarists, they're both charged with 80 lashes, 40 lashes for being in the same room as other men or other women, and 40 other lashes for playing music, which was forbidden.
That's really interesting. So, talking about music, how do you think music and Sharia law are talked about in the movies?
Yeah, music has a pretty deep and important role in the three movies, I think, right?
Great. I think Grace has something to say also.
Yes. So in Watch That, the use of music is actually quite interesting because a lot of it is Western music. One of the first songs that plays is Tongue Tied by Group Love, which is a song from 2011. And it really demonstrates how Watch That is sort of like differentiating herself from the traditional, woman or girl in Saudi Arabia. But there's also a lot of comments about Western music in this movie. The little girl gets into a fight with her mother, and to drown out the sound of her mother's shouting, she raises up music, and it's Western music. And the mother immediately gets mad, saying, "This music is giving you evil thoughts." And there's another scene where Miss Hassa, she's like investigating Watch's bag and finds tapes of love songs, which is considered, forbidden and taboo. So it's really interesting how they sort of integrated Western music as the more like older traditional people critique it, whereas Watch That, who's like the younger generation, and you could see her as like this new generation of like a Muslim girl, she enjoys it a lot. And it doesn't really impact her faith either. And, there's even they even talk about lyricality and music and like rhythm when discussing the Quran and how to recite it. Washta is in a little religious club and she learns how to recite it with lyricality. And, she learns that you don't only recite it like a presentation, like a casual, repeat the words that were said to you. There's actually an effort into it. And there's something quite beautiful about how she and her mother almost sing together.
Yeah. In Timbuktu too, there's this idea of like how paradoxical the members of Al-Qaeda are, because there's this idea of putting words into music when reading the Quran, sorry. And there's also this scene that comes to mind when talking about that. There's griot, kind of gathering in Timbuktu one night, and the different members of Al-Qaeda are doing like a round of the city to kind of see if something's going wrong, if anybody's transgressing the rules. And they come upon a house where a lot of people are gathered, and they hear songs and chants. And actually, they end up being griot chants, because in this specific area of the world, griot culture is very, very important. It's kind of the example of how Islamic culture mixed in with local culture. And so they were doing all of these chants to celebrate the Prophet and to praise Allah. And so one of the young boys who was kind of doing this round asked his superior, should we arrest them even though they're doing chants that kind of praise our Prophet and Muhammad, these religious chants? Should we like forbid them too? So that was an interesting question.
Definitely, yeah. The movies also show the ambiguous nature of a lot of these systems, because once again, Sharia is based on forms of philosophy, and anyone can really orient it towards their interpretation of it. And I think these movies do a great job at showing that.
Yeah, and lastly, also, since in Wajda they're using Western music, you hear a lot of Western music. I think it was really interesting and really important also that in Timbuktu, the main theme and the different musics that you hear composed by the amazing Tunisian composer Amin Bourassa, who's just amazing, are all kind of depicting also the traditional music that you can hear in Mali and in West Africa and in Saharan Africa in general. So they use traditional instruments, and it's just, the soundtrack is amazing, and it helps you settle in this whole entire environment.
Yeah. One contrast is that in A Separation, there's no music throughout the entire film. It's also an interesting thing, I think, to think about. What would you say, Salma?
I found that very interesting too, because like in A Separation, there's no music at all, like during the entire movie. We have a total absence of music scenes, as opposed to Timbuktu and Wajda. It just makes the movie more relatable, accurate, and real. Honestly, it feels like you're living the scenes with them, and there's nothing artificial that would make you think it's a movie. It just feels like, yeah, you're with them living the scene. And yeah, that's what I found interesting.
Definitely. Speaking about living with them, these movies show particular cases of Sharia and Sharia law. Saudi Arabia, Iran are known to be more authoritarian regimes, and Timbuktu takes place in the middle of an insurgency that took control of.
Yes.
So this relates to the bigger question: are these accurate representations of Sharia? Well, I would say, I don't know what you guys think, but I would say the answer is yes and no. Yes, because these things represent reality. I mean, I lived in Saudi Arabia at the same time where Wajda was filmed, and it brought back a lot of memories because I recognized a lot of the patterns. I'm not a woman, so I didn't. I'll cut that part out. But you think it's
no, keep it.
No, it's fine. Keep it.
I'm not.
It's fine. You should keep it.
Yeah. I'm not a woman, so I didn't necessarily relate to a lot of the structures that the societal structures that she had to deal with. But I have obviously a sister, I have a mother, and did that happen to them? Well, yes and no. The thing is, there wouldn't be movies about normal situations. The goal of these movies is to show special cases and to show stories that are very important to tell, but they don't symbolize the day-to-day experience of people, how people live in modern Islamic societies.
Yeah.
Yes, please.
No, it's true. Because we know of the different madhabs in Islam and in Sharia law, and it's true that we can differentiate each state and how they kind of apply their Sharia law based on the madhab they chose to follow. And you can't really, I mean, as a Moroccan, and I think Salma will agree with me, you can't really compare how Sharia is applied in Morocco with how Sharia is applied in Saudi Arabia or in Iran, because again of the madhab chose to follow. And
yeah, it's something specific to each country. Yeah.
And I would take that point even further, not even each country, but each person and each family.
Yeah.
Even living in Saudi Arabia, I had Saudi friends whose families were much less traditionalist, and others whose families were much more traditionalist. And you could say that all these families live their lives based on principles of Sharia. So no one's place or moral authority to dictate what Sharia is. There's another movie we didn't have the chance to talk about a bit more, but it's called Shams al-Ma'arif, and it tells the story of three teenagers that decide to make a horror film with their physics teacher, and the movie takes place in Jeddah, in Saudi, and it's a coming of age film. I personally, having spent large part of my teenage years there, identified with that movie much more, and it is also an instance of how legal Sharia norms and societal norms behave in a day-to-day context. And so I think it's important to make that distinction when talking how Sharia is represented in film.
Yeah, totally. And again, Islam, one of the essential points that we need to focus on when we speak of Islam is that each practitioner has a very personal relation to God. That is something that we can maybe differentiate from other religions, is that you have your own personal and direct relationship with God.
Yeah. Amazing.
All right. So thank you all for this amazing episode. So thank you to Ibti, Salma, and Grace, our amazing guests, for talking about your points and views. Thank you to Adam also for co-hosting this episode. So goodbye, everyone.
Thank you. Thanks for having us.
This was fun.
Thank you.
This podcast was prepared by the fall 2023 cohort of ISLA200 Islamic Civilizations at McGill University.